What is going on, everybody? We are live right now, and I have a very special guest in studio. Carla Spalding is going to talk about her run as a GOP candidate running against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, some of the very necessary changes that she believes that the GOP need to undergo if they want to have any success in the future, and a lot of the different ways that the left and the right can coalesce on issues of class and worker solidarity. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And today, once again in studio, I have a very special guest, Carla Spalding. How are you doing, Carla?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming here. Now, Carla actually reached out to me about 2 weeks ago after seeing some of my tweets, despite her being conservative and me being mostly leftist, and said that she thinks that there are a lot of areas that we can agree on. And we actually met. And it turns out there was a lot of areas that we agreed on, and a lot of common ground that we saw. And, you know, I would even say that with respect to both of the parties that claim they want to do something for the working class, we even both had our issues with how both parties deal with the issue of race. Although they deal with it in unique ways, they both still have an underlying issue of basically tokenizing their minority candidates. So, Carla, first, you ran against and are about to run against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz again. So overall, how did you feel about, what was your takeaway from running against her, and how did you feel about the outcome of the race?
Well, to start off with, as you know, that my district, District 23 in Florida, it's more democratic demographics. So it was difficult at first. But as time went by, we were able to have some left, some independents, and also Republicans, of course. And it was good. But at the end of the day, we know for a fact that there were some, they call it irregularities, as they may say.
Tim Canova was very familiar with those. Yeah.
We defeated Debbie Wasserman-Schultz the day of election. We defeated her early voting, and she barely won by less than a point in Dayton, Miami for the first time.
So you beat her in early voting too. That's supposed to be her bread and butter.
Well, we defeated her then.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, we did.
So you were very, very close. Y'all. So basically, like so many other instances we've seen, if you look at the raw metrics, you were beating her, and it was pointing towards you winning the election. As if you were a regular candidate running against maybe anybody else in the country, you would have won.
Until vote by mail.
Yeah.
Does it every time.
Mail-in ballots.
On the mail-in ballots. So we have to figure out a way to, what are we going to do? I mean, we knew from day one that we have to start paying attention. I just don't understand why we cannot have cameras in. I think we all should be able to watch and see the day of election, how they're counting the ballots. We wouldn't have the problems we have now if they would allow the general public. It shouldn't be a secret.
Yeah.
It should be left open, and we should be able to have access to see how how they're counting the ballots. And I think moving forward, I'm hoping Ron DeSantis will be able to help with that, especially in Florida.
So you've actually had the same complaints that I've heard now, a Democratic candidate and an independent candidate, and both had kind of flipped. So one was a Democrat who went independent, and one was the independent who went Democrat to run. And both of them had the same exact complaint running against the Democrats or an incumbent Democrat, which is they're doing well, and then the next thing you know, mail-in ballots or absentee ballots get counted. Or in Tim Canova's case, he barely lost, like 2%. Then when he goes to subpoena those records, all of a sudden they're destroyed. And so, like you said, if there was a live streamed version of the ballot counting process, I think they would increase transparency. And I would like to know, what do you think about this idea that just asking for transparency is now tantamount to treason or insurrection?
I think it would be a very good idea for the next election if somehow they're able to have the cameras where we can actually see what they're doing. And if words come to words, I think they should have maybe a Democrat and a Republican both looking in the room.
Yeah.
So in that way, no one can really say this person cheated or the other person did not. There's no confusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there, and we can all see in this country.
Yeah, and I feel like it's interesting because in Florida, specifically in Central and South Florida, we had to fire 3 election supervisors. Not even 3 years ago, because of the election tampering that we saw take place. Brenda Snipes actually got me kicked out of I was observing Tim Canova's elections in Plantation, actually. And that was when he was running up against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. And so when I questioned somebody as to why they were arbitrarily separating ballots, because they're not supposed to be doing that, they called over the supervisor, and they were like, what's he doing? I'm like, well, I'm an election observer. I'm allowed to be here. So they called Brenda Snipes, and Brenda Snipes tells her to call the cops on me if I won't leave.
Oh, wow.
Even though I was in election. Yeah, I had every right to be there.
Well, I had the opportunity to meet Tim Canova. Very nice gentleman.
Yes, amazing guy.
And yes, he is. And we were able to, actually, he did endorse my campaign.
Oh, that's great.
So that was wonderful, but very informative.
Yeah, you've got a lot of South Florida leftists loving your campaign. Even though they might disagree in a couple of things, I think they agree overall in your message and what your principles are.
Actually, several Democrats who said they voted for me, but they continued down the D, all the rest of it.
Yeah, wow. So that's actually the same thing that happened with Tim when he ran independent. Same thing. They were like, look, they were passing out the little flyers like, oh, this is your D. They pass out, so you've got to vote for all these Democrats. And they would cross out Debbie Wasserman-Schultz's name and put Tim Canova's. For even if they were hardcore Democrats, they're like, yeah, except for her. So that's great. So there seems to be another problem that kind of has stopped you from overtaking Debbie Wasserman-Schultz in that regard. And not just you, by the way. A lot of independent Democrats or left-leaning Democrats have the same problem, which is the GOP itself, or the lack of assistance that they gave you challenging somebody that we thought they didn't like out here. So can you tell me about the experience that you had as trying to be a non-establishment GOP candidate running against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz?
I think it's very challenging just overall, having to run against someone who's been in office for a very long time with the name recognition now. What I will say is that I think a lot of it also had to do with the media. And the media did not want people to know that I existed or other Republicans that are running against Ted, Maxine,
Marco Rubio.
all those. So they didn't want the people in the community to know that we existed.
So conservative media was blocking you out in the same way like CNN or MSNBC.
Not just, yes, I think they all did. Because if you notice, they waited until after the election. Then they started coming to ask us questions and said, by the way, we had 30 black Republicans ran and not one of you, no female, not one female in the Republican side made it. So they were asking me why. I said, you know why. You were part of it, part of the problem.
Yeah.
So, I just, it's very, it saddens me actually to know that I was in the Navy. I'm a veteran. I am a nurse, registered nurse, and I'm also a professor, college professor.
Busy.
Very, very busy. And I think that what motivated me to run is because of exactly what's going on right now. I realize that if we don't stand up, who will? Yeah. And those who are truly willing to do it, I think they don't tend to help those people. They still put the same 20 years, 30 years, 40 years people in the office, and then after that they complain.
People who took that money or took the bribes that candidates where they know that they're not worried about you doing anything that might upset the status quo within the party, basically.
But here's part of the problem as well. For example, I would say those who've been in office for more than 20 years, right? Why do we keep re-electing them? Why?
So some of them might argue that we're not actually re-electing them, but that's a different discussion. But because of the lack of awareness for other candidates, people don't know the truth about what those candidates or what those politicians or incumbents have done. They don't know that there are other people out there with greater ideas. They don't even know that the greater ideas actually exist. So I would say that's probably a lot to do with it.
Well, I think we should talk about this as well. What do you think about, let's get back to this. I also want the public to know, not because you donate to the party, meaning that they're going to help the candidates in the general. They do not.
So basically she's saying just because you donate to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party does not mean they're going to funnel that money into the local candidate.
Yes.
And they're supposed to do that, by the way. During the DNC fraud lawsuit, the court asked their lawyers, Bruce Beaver was the one representing them at the time, well, if you're taking all this money from these people, why did you choose a candidate who, based off of every statistical analysis, was less equipped to beat Trump than Bernie Sanders was in the two-man race that they had? And what they said, instead of acknowledging that they did take the money, of course, and then they just did what they wanted to do, they said, we don't know if this money is used to support grassroots candidates or on-the-ground candidates at the state level, which they absolutely knew it did. But you're absolutely correct. A lot of people found out the hard way.
So I would recommend, if you want to support your candidate, you want someone to win, get involved. Go straight to their website and donate to that candidate. Do not rely on anyone to give the money to the candidate, because most of the time they don't receive it, and that's a fact.
Yeah.
I can speak on that. And
so you're saying basically the GOP's establishment media, or the conservative establishment media, the moment that you didn't stay in line, like, let's just say, Candace Owens, just as a random example for no apparent reason, the moment you stepped out of line, they were like, this is, because even so, when Tim Canova ran, Rick Scott never stepped in. When Debbie Wasserman-Schultz got caught cheating, when Brenda Snipes got caught cheating on behalf of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, he reached out and pleaded to him multiple times. And once again, it comes down to what, our ultimate...
Well, if we had started looking from Tim Canova's, from when he complained, this has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
But nobody really paid attention. And even when he brought it to light, it was just pretty much ignored. Yes. So now it continued, and it still continues till now. So if we still don't come up with a plan, that's my concern. We can say it's in the past, but moving forward, I don't want the same thing to happen in 2022. And now that they don't have President Trump to blame, I'm just curious. Now, as you can see, let's talk about I saw that article this morning regarding the vaccine. 20 million vaccine.
Yeah, 20 million vaccines have disappeared, people.
20 million.
20 million.
Not one.
That apparently got shipped out, already, and they just fell off the back of the truck somewhere. Now, once again, y'all, I'm not, if you the person stealing vaccines and trying to sell them.
No. They're going to blame it on President Trump.
Somehow.
Yes. Somehow. It's always his fault for everything. So, it's just...
But we won't see the blame game that we saw, right? So before... I'm an election integrity activist, and I've always talked about election integrity. Now they've used Trump as an excuse and effort to address it, because if the most important thing is to get him out, not free and fair elections, which is bull. But now they can't do that. They can't play that game, and so you want to see exactly how they're going to act now. They can't play the Trump blame game.
I'm really waiting to see 2022 what's gonna happen, and I think. Oh, by the way, you know that a lot of the Republicans now have gone. A lot of them are going independent in my district.
Yes,
over a third now of the community, they're independent. So
I would say that you and Tim Canova probably had a lot to do with that. They saw the way that y'all were treated. I mean,
maybe to an extent, but I think after this election, 2020, you clearly see, no matter how blind you are, you see that they do not represent the people.
Yeah. It's
very clear they represent themselves. And that's not what they're supposed to be doing. 100%. So people have to wake up at some point or the other. And I'm from Jamaica, born and raised in Jamaica, and I came here. The country was not like this. People were much more polite. Now it's difficult to even speak to someone who's a Democrat, because the hatred that they've occurred in their hearts for people.
Manufactured hatred, man, as a matter of fact. It's manufactured. I've never seen Democrats and Republicans having so much trouble just talking to each other. Just talking. Before you could, when I was in the Army, because it's just by nature of the beast, a lot of people in the military are Republican. I was independent, left-leaning, and we could go out and have a beer together and disagree and, you know, laugh, and the next day we go back to work like it is what it is. You know, we have agreements where we agree, we disagree where we disagree, but I respect them as a person. And now we've seen it take it to a different level when you're not even allowed to respect this other person as a human being, or you're called a fascist or a neo-Nazi sympathizer. And, you know, same thing on the other side of that fence, right? We were talking earlier, and I would love for you to expound upon this, how the GOP, much like the Democrats, will not uplift any minority that they cannot tokenize. And you said that you even experienced some of this during, you know, while running for office, and of course, you know, just in your day-to-day engagement with some of the conservatives in the GOP. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Well, like I started off earlier by saying that if we do not, the Republican Party, do not start engaging to the younger people of color, they will lose the election, and we will have to follow. Look at AOC and all the other Democrats that are telling the people wrong information. So we need to start getting our own people within the party so that we can actually really deliver the message of the hope, the message that we can do everything that we set our mind to do. We can also realize you don't have to depend on the government to take care of you. We give them the tools or the resources that we need to make it. Instead, we have the Democrats who will, again, I always ask, why are you poor? You say that the Democrats are for the poor. Then why are you still poor after decades? So obviously, it doesn't make any sense.
True.
So I think we need to really come together and realize that this is America, the greatest country in the world. And we need to start taking care of Americans. There should be absolutely no reason. And this is what made me a little bit upset, that as far as I'm concerned, any Republican that initially signed the bill to give $600 to the American
the
people,
crumbs, the crumb bill,
yes, and give trillions of dollars to overseas, to Pakistan, countries that people do not even like Americans, and we're willing to give them our money for transgender.
We didn't give him any money for. You're talking about the. Was it Egypt?
No, I think it was Pakistan.
Was it? Oh, for transgender. Yeah, that was weird, and I don't think that's what it's going for. I actually think it's some bull.
But regardless, my point of the matter is, they're still complaining about giving money to the American people, measly $2,000, and they have no problem signing the bill to just give them money.
Have you got that check yet, by the way? I ain't got it. Y'all got $2,000 because I've been told that once Biden comes in, all the money is supposed to just fall into my account magically, and it's supposed to be all good.
I don't know anyone who has received it yet.
Yeah, I don't think anybody received it yet. Somebody might have found 20 million vaccines.
No. It's the check is in the mail. Haven't you heard that?
Yeah. So we got direct deposit now, y'all. I don't think that's, don't tell Joe Biden that lie ain't gonna work no more. But in all seriousness, I 100% agree with you. We can't continue to give money to this military-industrial complex, to these foreign governments that we effectively installed in a lot of situations, and then look at the American people in a bipartisan middle, like basically an FU to the American people. Yeah, we ain't got it right now, but don't worry about all this other money in this bill.
Yeah,
that's for something else, And what's funny is, what made it even more disgusting. So Tulsi Gabbard actually talked about how they were using that. It was an appropriations bill that they slipped that money into, and so if anyone would have voted against it and it didn't pass, it would have shut the entire government down. So they were literally holding the $600 hostage and holding the American people hostage so they can get their military grants.
But you know what? When I'm in Congress, one of my bills that I'm going to make sure we put together, I think they should have standalone bills. What the heck does any of that have to do with COVID-19 or people dying? Absolutely nothing. And they have to put all those. That's why the bill can't get passed, because everybody wants a little bit of their own thing to be in the bill. And I think that should be totally illegal. I don't think it should be.
Talking about the outlawing pork barrel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Too many things are in the bill that has nothing to do with the issue. So if we want to write a bill for COVID to help the people COVID-19, then it should just be strictly that and nothing else.
Well, see, that's common sense though, right? That's what you would do if you're not taking a bunch of corporate money and you don't got no overlords to answer to. But unfortunately, in my opinion, I think we've seen that 98% of the actors in DC are bad faith actors. I think that they know that there should have been a standalone bill. I mean, even Trump, he was taunting them. He's like, literally, just give me at the time, it was back in August, he's like, give me a $1,200 bill, give me a $2,000 bill, I'll sign it right now, standalone bill. That should have been the moment where Nancy Pelosi, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, all the leaders of the party stepped up and say, hey, he's saying he'll give us the $2,000 if you send it up to the desk right now. So now we got to put pressure on Nancy Pelosi to get that bill out. And we didn't see that, right? And then, of course, they get to all play the blame game again while we just sit here, while Americans sit here with no money in their accounts. That they're not good. They cannot possibly be taken as serious, good faith actors with some of the behavior that we've seen from both parties in Congress.
I agree, and this is what I'm saying. It just amazes me actually to see this all taking place. And another thing, again, they want to impeach a president that's not even sitting as a president right now. That's just
distraction again.
Correct, and they're going to do that and waste taxpayers' money once again to do this impeachment like they did prior. And it's going to end up that they can't do it anyway. So
they can't do
another set of wasted funds. And by the way, another thing that I want to talk about is they're always saying they are going to raise taxes. The fact of the matter is the rich, very, very wealthy, will never ever pay the taxes that they want us to pay.
Yeah,
and it's not because they don't want to. They know they legally have ways of
they definitely don't want to, but also there are so many different loopholes that they can take advantage of. Yeah.
Correct. So who gets stuck with the taxes? The middle class and the middle upper. They're the ones that are going to be stuck with these taxes. So they shouldn't listen to anyone says, "Oh, we're going to make the rich pay." No, wouldn't you take your money and go somewhere else? It doesn't even make any sense. Nobody wants to really work very hard for decades, and then when you have your money, now they're saying give 50%, 60% away. Nobody wants to do that.
That's true. So I don't live in California. But it's a very interesting point that you make. So I'll always laugh when people say, "Well, don't you want to know about Donald Trump's tax return?" Like, I don't really care. And like, also, we see what they're spending our money on.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to have to pay them to give themselves raises and spend my money on bombs, to blow people up overseas. Also, no, we have a fundamental issue, which is so for example, if anybody's worried about like Joe Biden quote unquote taxing the rich, you can go ahead and get that out because once again, he's one of the oligarchs. The Democratic and Republican Party have both shown the propensity to lie and pretend like they're going. One says they're going to tax the rich, the other one says they're going to lower the tax on the middle class and the lower middle class. But at the end of the day, they all end up just taxing the middle class, both of them. They tax the middle class, and they especially tax small businesses.
Yes.
They are trying, it's like they're actively working to destroy small businesses for the corporate class to basically buy up everything that's left.
Well, let me ask you a question. I know that you're an independent. I'm conservative, but here's what I want to ask you. Do you believe in raising the minimum wage to $15? Do you think that's what it should be, or should it be?
It actually probably should be higher, technically, but so I'm a proponent of raising the minimum wage because once you put power in the consumer's hands rather than the corporation's hands, now I have more freedom of choice as to who I want to shop with. I don't have to go through Amazon Prime, et cetera, because now you're creating actual competition. Because if the customer service is a little bit better at this spot, I'll pay extra $1.50 for whatever it is, or $2 for whatever it is, just for better. Especially living in Miami, y'all know how rare good customer service is out here. So, and then that allows you can bring more people on because now you are getting more foot traffic because consumers have more money to spend. They're not just spending all the time in Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead.
Well, you want to hear my perspective?
I would love to, absolutely.
You tell someone, especially in this economy right now, how it is, a small business that can barely afford to pay one person. If I have a small business and now I'm forced to pay this amount, I have 3 people working for me. don't you think I would have to let one go? Because you can't get funds to pay if you don't have it.
So in
you
this
have
economy,
a budget.
In this economy, 100%. But so I'm talking about in the grander scheme. There's some things that would have to be set in place before we can even begin having that conversation again, because our economy has been set so far back. So there would have to be a rollout, an incremental rollout. We need to address, in my opinion, once again, how the reason that small businesses, like the idea of $15 or $20 minimum wage is like insane to them. It isn't because they don't want to pay their workers. For the most part, it's because look at what they're having to pay in taxes. Like they have to pay this ridiculous amount for healthcare.
Correct.
They have to pay their state taxes. They then have to pay the federal taxes. And then you have to pay your property taxes or at least whatever that is, So like at the end of the day, small businesses should not have this many obstacles in order to keep themselves running, which keeps people employed, which gives consumers an option, which creates competition in this supposed free market. We need to be lowering those roadblocks for them, because what we've been seeing is while we lower the roadblocks for corporations, the roadblocks for the small businesses have been increasing, and that's where I think we have to actually address it at its core, which is like, why would they need to fire somebody if they decide to pay them a living wage? Because my mom was reminiscing about a time where she was making like $2 above minimum wage working at KFC with health benefits back in California when she was in high school, and I was like, hold up, is this a joke? We thought she was telling a joking story, like a hyperbole. She's like, no, actually, I loved working at KFC when I was a kid. Because like she said she could have basically had an apartment by herself with the money she was making. And the overall business did much better because now I'm not stressing over the day-to-day life of being poor. I have a living wage. So.
Okay, so let me explain too. Part of it, for example, I'm in the healthcare field.
Mm-hmm.
There's when it comes to the nurses and the CNAs, it's a little bit different when you're in a hospital versus a nursing home or an assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
The reimbursement, especially for Medicaid, is not very high. So when they give a little bit of a chump change to the providers, they still have to keep the facility going.
Mm-hmm.
So now if they're bound to pay a certain amount higher, it becomes very challenging. So I think we can't just look at just what a minimum wage should be. Mm-hmm. I don't think it has, because New York and California is completely different from Florida or from maybe some country places that most things are still affordable. A lot of things are not affordable. Have you been to the store recently in Publix?
Well,
everything it's just very high.
But they're able to do that though. So Publix and Walmart and like Costco, well, not as much Costco, but like Sam's Club. I don't know if y'all familiar with that down here, but they're able to do that because there's no competition for them. Because a small grocery store like the ones you see down here on Calle Ocho or 8th Street, like if it's not in the metropolitan area, and even then sometimes they can't survive, like they get crushed. And
they are crushed right now. Yeah. And I think if they would actually give them a break, I'm just suggesting.
A legitimate tax break.
Yes, a legitimate tax break, even just for, say, a year of bare minimum tax, or no tax at all for that first year, for the next year, because they've made very little revenue. Mm-hmm. So
this year especially, the next 2 years, they should have a huge tax break.
In fact, I just got a bill from the VA, so a lot of people think because you're a veteran you don't have to pay. But yes, absolutely, you have to pay your bill. They do charge.
I'm retired. I still get a bill. I mean, I still get a monthly. Well, I pay quarterly, but I still have to pay for my healthcare. Yeah.
Yes, you do. So again, my concern right now is the small businesses that are here and they need support, and I just don't want them to be burdened with any additional things as it is right now. I've met so many people that I've spoken with, and they're really, really concerned about moving forward. And I think what most elected officials are not recognizing is that all of this comes with mental health problems.
Yeah. I don't think they care. That's the problem. I think they know it. They just don't care.
Well, it does. And very, very soon, after the next 2 or 3 months, when people have to start paying back their rent
PPP loans
and mortgages, and if it's not there, then it becomes also an issue. So we have a little bit of road ahead of us.
Yes.
And we just have to eventually really look at these things openly and honestly, and not deviate from the facts or deviate from not wanting to hear. They say they want to unite. They want to make things work, and the only way to do that is actually by by having a general open conversation without either party actually getting upset.
Yeah, without having these
whatever we
preconceived
say.
notions and like what their intentions are. See, it's interesting because I've heard the argument about overburdening small businesses before when it comes to $15 minimum wage, but very rarely is it from a position of empathy. It's more like, oh, we just don't want people to have to pay that amount. It's going to bankrupt. But most of the time, they don't really care about that. They just worry that some business that they're probably in charge of is going to make them some money. All right, having to pay somebody out more than they want. But from your perspective, genuinely having concern for the mom and pop shops, that they're, and realistically speaking, especially in our economy, there are some shops that would struggle initially. However, once again, that argument usually isn't made because they're like out of concern for those people, and that is something that has to be considered because unfortunately there are consequences that we're dealing with from the shutdowns and all that good stuff, and so we kind of have to deal with the root causes of a lot of that stuff.
Yes. And
I think that we can do all of that simultaneously, and we can't. You can't just because something new comes up doesn't mean you pretend like we solved the other problems, right?
Exactly.
And I feel like we have a bad habit in this country of doing that. But go ahead.
But that's part of the reason why I say that we have to really just look at it overall, not just say do this, do that. You have to kind of
put a Band-Aid on.
We got to figure out what's, as like you said, the root cause. How can we move forward, realistically speaking? And like I said, if you're in the hospital, in the nursing home, and you're only getting $200 reimbursement per patient, that can't even pay them for the day, a nurse for the day. And you see what I'm saying? So it's a lot more detailed than just saying do this. So I believe they need to sit at the table, and this is why we also need to be able to have a seat at the table where we can actually voice our opinion, what we think are the true solutions, because how are they going to tell us what to do? And that's why there is such a misunderstanding to begin with in the health. They don't have any health degree. They don't know. They're not taking care of patients. They don't know how it's transmitted. So therefore... And
then anyone who deviates from the mainstream healthcare talking point, they try to end your career.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think Congress needs to have more than just attorneys. They really need to have more diverse professions. So in that way... I can say, or you can say, or somebody can say, hey, this is what's going on, and I think this is what has worked so far. So how about we try this? And we don't have that right now. And I think it's very important for we, the American people, to stand up for our free speech, our rights. And I like to say free, but really nothing is really free. Yeah. We all pay a price one way or the other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so 100%. You got to fight for everything.
And we are at that stage right now. I don't know about you, but I'm certainly tired of the deceiving, the lies. And President Trump tried very hard to help and put America. I really understand first. And I think because maybe I was in the military, I am just drawn to that. Because if we cannot take care of our own selves, how can we take care of others?
That's true.
And why should we take our hardworking money and just give trillions away to others?
Well, some would argue that helping out corporations is American.
So why don't they help the people? Like I think Bank of America said that they were donating a couple millions of dollars to the Black Lives Matter organization, not the movement.
Yeah, that was the organization. Which means they were giving $2 million to Joe Biden.
So,
but
why did they not make it of use and go into the poor neighborhoods?
That's very true.
And instead of giving them the money, they can
give
say
financial literacy classes.
Yes, or help rebuild your community, and we pay you. So they actually work, build their community to make it better, and they're making money.
Yeah, that's true.
But instead, I really don't. Nothing they do makes sense to me.
There seems to be a denial of opportunity. Like it's about making money, but more importantly, making sure that no one else can make the kind of money you want to make is what it seems like for a lot of these people, regardless of the ideological fence. So I want to go ahead and wrap up, but before we go, I want to know one leftist policy that you like, and I will give you one of my conservative values. So, like, whatever policy that you like that's considered leftist, whether it be like the meritocracy or lack thereof in the political parties, police accountability, things like that somebody may not think that you would support because you're conservative?
One that I do like that they're looking towards doing is student loans. I think it is in my district, it's not only a burden to the students to move forward, but it's also now become a burden to the parents and the grandparents. Yes. Now
that debt passes with you, even if you pass away.
So here is what I was thinking. The Democrat says forgive the entire loan.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans say no, but we don't have a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, how about, I'm still stuck on the $1 trillion that's going overseas.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, every time I read the bill, I'm like,
the $1 trillion overseas, and yet they're denying children for an opportunity to go to college to be better. Because here's what, either way we're going to pay. If you
Somebody's going to pay for it.
Yeah, but listen, if they don't help them now, and they don't go to college, they're going to be living off the system. Which one is worse?
That's true.
Do you want to live off the system and pay for them to live off the system, or do you want to help them to become a little bit educated so they can contribute to the society?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So that is the choice that I'm saying. So somehow it has to come to the table and say, okay, we may not be able to forgive it all, but how about lowering the interest rate where it's not higher than a mortgage?
Yeah.
But
funny, I don't know if you know this about student loans. So I learned this through a professor who's like part of like the grant team for UNC. So basically, they have the researchers most of the professors there are mostly there to do research to apply for federal grants. Mm-hmm. So he was telling me that basically none of the school's academics are paid for anything with like tuition money. He's like, it's mostly federal grant money that you get from, different research or different research grants, and then if you have a really good athletics program, athletics.
Yes.
So he's like, basically, they have no idea what the loan money is for, it's basically it just gets transferred there, and then they count it as if it's already been made. And then he's like, if they wanted to forgive all student debt, it literally wouldn't hurt anybody at all, because it's the federal government who kind of implemented these programs as like another tax. So like if you want to be a contributing member of society and live in the middle class and get everything that comes with a college degree, then you're going to be taxed for it too. Like you're getting taxed for everything else, which in my opinion is inherently unfair. I think that, like, I agree with you. Like, I feel like the student loan, if you took a loan from a college, that's different in my opinion. It has to be handled differently. But most people's debt are federal. And at that point, I don't believe that the federal government, I don't believe that they should have been given, if you got all this, literally trillions of dollars for grant money to corporations, then you have billions, multi-billions for grants, more grants to make sure that people can go to the school of their choice as long as obviously their academic merits allow them to do so. So I want to tell you my conservative value.
Okay.
That everybody always gets kind of surprised at. I am actually a Second Amendment absolutist. I 100% believe in the Second Amendment. If anything, I believe I don't have enough guns. I don't trust the government, and I feel like any leftist, especially if you're black in this country, like, the distrust in the government is kind of almost what formed the left originally, the quote unquote radical left, I guess you should say. But like the Black Panther Party, the original Antifa from the 30s over in Italy, the distrust from the government is one of the reasons that leftists have championed the Second Amendment in the past. And it's only really become a recent thing where you see leftists strongly disliking this idea of protecting themselves. But in my opinion, I know it's going to sound super cliche, I guess, but like the Second Amendment is supposed to be there to protect your First Amendment. And right now, we see that the odds have been tipped in the favor of the government, the federal government, so that now they feel confident taking pieces and chipping away at your First Amendment right and even your Second Amendment's right and a lot of your constitutional rights little by little, because at the end of the day, they're not threatened by anybody to do anything about that. So like I believe in the militias that we're supposed to be having, where basically as long as you're old enough to hold a weapon, you could train and then become part of a state sanctioned militia. That's what became the National Guard actually. But before it was overtaken by the executive branch, it was local people belonged to local militias. They were the police departments. and you are from that community, so the odds of you like going and killing your Aunt Karen's best friend's son, like you're not doing it because you know all these people. So you're gonna want to, you want to keep the peace, but you're gonna do it in a way that is conducive to, actual peace, not just peace for a dollar, which is what we've seen the police institution become.
Very good. I think at the end of the day, I always say, in Jamaica we say gunman. I'm not sure. You know my gunman?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Gunman. I can't translate it into the American term. Will always have their guns.
Well, we call them shooters. Yeah,
they can make them. They can do. They go underground. They'll get it. The people who suffer at the end of the day are the law-abiding people, because then you can't protect yourself and your families. True. So it's very necessary, especially in a time like this. We have to.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Carla, thank you so much for joining the show today. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
Well, I am on Twitter _Carla Spalding for Congress, and also on Facebook, Carla Spalding, and CarlaSpaldingForCongress.com.
Yeah,
join me.
She is running again against David Wasserman-Schultz in the upcoming midterm
and
election.
This time we are going to make sure that we win. So we need your help on the ground. Come and help us.
We got a lot of South Florida viewers, a lot of Florida viewers in general. So if you can help, hey, listen, her and Christine Olivo met the other day, and they got along famously. Christine feels the same way about Carla, and vice versa as I do. And we had a really, really, really good conversation. And it's about time that we just really start addressing this establishment from its core, guys. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal or progressive or whatever. We ain't got much time left. Eventually, if you're not suffering yet, it'll trickle down to you. Don't worry, because suffering, unlike actual Reaganomics, does actually trickle down, believe it or not. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa and Sukasa, and always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. All right.